Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India. Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste, welcome to the second session of performance management system and appraisal. In this session we are going to look at aspects about the performance evaluation, different methods of performance appraisal. When we talk about performance appraisal, the very first question we need to ask, who should do the appraisal? So it is not only the supervisor who can do the appraisal of the employee. Appraisal can be done by employee himself, it can be done by subordinates, it can also be carried out in the 360-degree format wherein colleagues, subordinates as well as superiors, all three categories of the colleagues evaluate the performance of one person. A rating committee can be assigned for the appraisal system, only peers can do the appraisal, and of course the most commonly prevalent practice, that is appraising by the immediate supervisor. So whenever we are setting up a appraisal system, we need to ask for a particular job what is the best, who are the parties to be involved in the appraisal process, and accordingly out of these 6 we can choose 1 or 2 options. Today we are going to have a detailed discussion on the appraisal tool. You might remember our conversation in the last session where we left our discussion on this point, that any appraisal tool has to answer these 2 questions, or any appraisal tool is designed around these 2 questions. What are those? What to measure and how to measure. What to measure, that can be work output, that can be personal competencies or goal achievement, and how it can be measured, it can be measured through generic dimensions, actual job duties and behavioral capabilities. Any appraisal form need to have these characteristics. First of all appraisal forms should have the basic employees information, a description about the accountability, objectives and standards, competencies and the indicators of those competencies, major achievement and contribution, the space to explain these points, developmental achievements, that is related to how employee is likely to or has developed in past year and likely to develop in the next performance cycle. Developmental needs, plans and goals are generally there in all the major appraisal forms. Stakeholder inputs, it is recognized that it is not only supervisor or the colleagues or the stakeholders or customers within the organization who are important, who have to be consulted for the appraisal of the employee. Nowadays it is recognized that stakeholders outside of the organizational boundaries can also be very relevant when it comes to the appraisal of an employee, at least in many cases, particularly cases where there are customer facing role, in the roles where societal involvement is high, or in roles where the professional bodies like researchers, so the professional bodies and their evaluation about that employee in that professional body is also important. So, in these many cases the stakeholder inputs are important and they should be included in the appraisal form. Generally in a good appraisal form you also get to see a section on employee comments, where employee or appraisee can also note down some of his observations or his own reactions. Last but not the least, signature is important. The characteristic of a good appraisal forms are that it is simple, it has high relevancy, there is a descriptiveness, adaptability, comprehensiveness, definitional clarity, communication and time orientation. These are the characteristics of a good appraisal form. Simplicity means one thing should mean one thing, not one and a half or two things. Relevancy means it should have the pertinent objectives related to the job of the appraisee. Descriptiveness means it should not be so cryptic that you need to take the help of expert to decipher what is the meaning of a particular word. Adaptability, that means the appraisal form design should be such which can be adapted with the requirement of time and with the requirement of the change in job with time. It should have comprehensiveness, that means major aspects of the performance may be characteristic, behavior, outcome. If it is competency based, then knowledge, skill, attitude, plus of course the objectives, these should be included in an appraisal form. Definitional clarity is connected to the descriptiveness, wherein we also need to give a operational definition of characteristics or the behavioral elements making or constituting the appraisal form. Communication, meaning the formatting and the overall design of the appraisal form should be such that it should communicate with the appraisee and appraiser in a effective way, and of course the time orientation, that means performance cycle must be mentioned, and if the job is related to or the goals involved in the jobs are related to a timeline, that those timelines should also be mentioned in the appraisal form. Ratings can be determined in two primary ways. One is judgmental, another is mechanical. Judgmental meaning arriving at a defensible summary considering every aspect of performance. So, there is an element of synthesis in it, wherein data coming from different sources is considered, synthesized, and based on that synthesis judgment about the performance of the employee is communicated. Mechanical is just adding up the scores assigned in each section and arriving at some final score. In a appraisal system, in a good appraisal system, generally we see the scope for both types of evaluation or both types of rating. Both the types of ratings have their value, have their importance in the overall appraisal system. Now we will look at various performance appraisal methods available. So please keep in mind the characteristic of a good appraisal. Also keep in mind who has to do the appraisal and who are the respondent, what are the approaches and what are the characteristic of the good evaluation method, good appraisal method. We need to choose one or other combinations of these methods which we are going to discuss. So we have graphic rating scale method, alternation ranking method, paired comparison, Ford distribution, critical incidence method, narrative forms, behaviorally anchored rating scale, management by objectives, computerized and web based performance appraisal, merge methods. As I mentioned that in appraisal forms generally we see the combination of different methods, and annual confidential report which is still followed in some of the government organizations. So first example we see is of the graphic rating scale, which is looking at certain competencies in a scale form. So 1 to 5 or 1 to 3 or 1 to 7 can be the scale, and that particular competency is assessed on that scale. What is clearly stated and which is reflected in this form, which is taken from the Dessler and Bichu-Verkey's book published by Pearson with the title of Human Resource Management. So, these formats are taken from that book. It is a good exemplar of a graphic rating scale, wherein you see different competencies like communication, organizational know-how, personal effectiveness, all these are mentioned, and 1 to 5 scale is given for their evaluation. Notable thing is that it is also mentioned what is the meaning of 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. So, we talked about a definitional clarity, a precision in the performance appraisal formats or performance appraisal heads, and you see by giving these kind of operational definition, we increase the precision of the assessment, we increase the definitional clarity about different aspects which are being evaluated in the appraisal. So, this is the second page of the appraisal form, graphic rating scale, and here you see it is a mixed method, because it is combination of the behavioral or competency and also the result. So, on the second page you see the result, accomplishment 1 and 2, this is just for an example, are given, that is space is given, and again the 1 to 5 is also again explained. So, 1 means low expectation or low impact, here 1 and 2 means low impact on the of the accomplishment or the low level, lower than the expected level of achievement, moderate impact is the expected level of achievement, and high impact means high level of accomplishment. And you see the description is also given. For example, at the low impact accomplishment, it is mentioned that efficiency or effectiveness of the operations remained the same or improved only minimally. So, that is the objective assessment reflection of the performance, and for the same job, if the if a person is of the high impact accomplishment type, then it means that efficiency or effectiveness of the operations improved tremendously. So, likewise this is the combination of the competency and the goal achievement based assessment or performance appraisal forms. Second method is called alternation ranking method. It is used only when there are number of players in the team, number of members, large number of members in the team, and all of them have to demonstrate similar types of traits or the forms of accomplishment. So, this one example is given based on the trait. On one particular trait, you can give the ranking to all the team members or all the department members, depending on whatever is the scope of the appraisal falls in the jurisdiction of one team head or one departmental head, and within that department and team everyone is given a ranking on a particular trait. So, likewise that ranking is given to the employees on multiple traits, and employees, team members who are ranked consistently higher on large number of traits are considered to be the best performers, like this. Third method is paired comparison method. Paired comparison method is demonstrated in this slide. Again, it is taken from the Bichu-Verkey and Dessler's book of Human Resource Management published by Pearson. So, you can see where on this example there are 5 employees, they have to be compared on different aspects of job. So, here we have taken 2 aspects of job, quality of work and creativity, and on all these traits each member is compared with other 4 members. In this way, when we compare everyone with everyone else on different aspects of the job, we look at who is one candidate, who are the candidate who are consistently rated better, ranked higher in comparison to other team members, and based on that we can also come to the ranking of the employees. Another method is critical incidents method. Critical incidents method is an attempt to club the quantitative scale based assessment as well as qualitative incidence based assessments. So, in a typical critical incidence method based evaluation, targets are identified and the duties are identified, but instead of only mentioning what was the duty and to what percent or on what scale the achievement was on what scale the accomplishment was achieved. So, critical incidence method is where we include the duties as well as target, but instead of only giving the duties and target and mentioning that employee achievement has been of this much percentage on a particular duty or particular target, it also captures the spatial contributions or spatial errors at times in the form of critical incidents. So, that gives a peep, a more qualitative peep in the general attitude and performance orientation of the employee. So, here in this example you see schedule production for plant, that is the category of the duty, and target against the target there was a 90% utilization of personnel and machinery in plant, orders delivered on time, this was the achievement, this could be the target or this could be lesser than the target. So, it is specified that the target has to be specified in the beginning. So, target could also be 95% utilization, and this manager in this example has achieved 90% utilization. So, there is a fairly objective assessment of the performance, but at the same time it also includes one critical incidents, that is this manager has instituted a new production scheduling system, it decreased the late order by 10% last month, increased the machine utilization in plant by 20% last month. So, like these we give critical incidents which gives the better picture, which gives more detailed description of the performance of the incumbent. Likewise, there are two other examples are given. I suggest please go through these examples and try to understand these how critical incidents method work. It is a combination of quantitative assessment as well as qualitative assessment. Now, we will talk about a fairly complicated rating scale, but at the same time very thorough in terms of its capability to justifiably evaluate the performance of a appraisee or incumbent. So, developing BARS, behaviorally anchored rating scale, is based on these 5 things. What are those? Generate critical incidents, develop performance dimensions, reallocate incidents, scale the incidents, and develop a final instrument. Basically, we talk about one particular situation of the job. In that situation, what can be the possible behavior of an incumbent? We generate the possible behaviors based on observations, based on our existing knowledge, and those possible behaviors are compared with the different performance dimensions, and performance dimensions and the possible behavior are arranged. So, advantage of this scaling is that it is much more accurate. So, it is able to gauge the performance in a more objective way. Very clear standards have to be defined if we have to use this scale. Another special benefit of using behaviorally anchored rating scale is that it almost instantly gives the feedback. So, you see the expected incidences in a particular situation, and against each incidence or against each response some ranking is given. So, based on the experience, supervisor and most of the time employee himself can identify what are their general pattern of behavior in a particular situation. So, they look at that rating and they can also see what are the better behavioral options about that situation or a particular aspect of the job. So, employee clearly sees that what else and what are the next levels of performance. So, that is the benefit of behaviorally anchored rating scale, very special benefit. Independent dimension. So, we can look at different aspects and we have to create different rating scales related to the different aspects of the job. And consistency means meaning of 1 to 5 if not very well specified in the rating scale methods, those the meaning of those 1, 2, 3 or 4 or 5 whatever rating is given on whatever scale is being used can be different for different people. We will look at the some of the errors caused because of the meaning of the numbers in the perception of different people, but the consistency reflects that what is the meaning of 3 to 1 appraiser and appraisee will not be different from another appraiser or appraisee, because 3 to 1 whatever scale or 10 whatever the scale identified, there is a clear behavioral indicators given. So, the scope of subjectivity, scope of different interpretation of the same number very significantly minimized in the behaviorally anchored rating scale process. So, now we will take the example of behaviorally anchored rating scale process. Now, we will talk about performance appraisal and management system which has a major impact in the corporate world, which started since early 60s and became very popular afterward, that is called management by objectives. It is a comprehensive and formal organization wide goal setting and appraisal program. So, in this method whole organization chooses specific objectives and those objectives are translated at the department, team and individual level. There are some special characteristics of MBO which makes it special. First step is setting the organization's goal. So, you might recall our session, our discussion in the very first session where we looked at long term goals and how long term goals are determinant of the organization strategy. You might recall the our first lecture we talked about strategy is the method of achieving long term goals of the organization and how strategy and HR function are closely connected. So, that is also the first requirement of MBO, wherein we need to identify the organization's goals first. That is a first or the precondition to start process of management by objective. Second step is setting the departmental goals arising out of the organization goals, simple. Discussion of the departmental goals. So, very important feature of MBO is that it is not a top to bottom approach, like it is not that goals are decided by the management or decided by the top management and they are communicated to the departments or employees or teams and they have to follow that. A discussion has to happen. What is the meaning of a particular organization goal from my organization's or my department's point of view? So, these kind of discussions are very important feature of MBO. Discussions help in clarifying the criteria for performance, also clarify the rationale of setting up a particular objective and also make this whole process democratic in nature. It means in the discussion there has to be a scope to look at what department's expectation is, what are the department's challenges are, what are the department's potential. When they appeal to modify the organizational goals, that has to be looked at in the positive light, that has to be taken with a sense of trust. So, discussion has to happen between the department heads and the corporate heads and at the corporate level goals, while while translating the corporate goals, corporate level goals to the departmental level goals. Based on this discussion, expectations are set, the mutual expectation at the team level as well as the individual level. Individual level expectation setting also have to be supported by proper discussion. It should also be transparent and open process where there is objective data based discussion about the possibility of the performance, ways of achieving the performance and resources required to achieve that performance. So, this process of openness, transparency, data driven approach, performance orientation and not only achievement, but the resource or investment orientation to accomplish that resource, these are the features of MBO, and because of that, because of these features, for many decades MBO remain one of the most favorite methods of performance appraisal system. We looked at these methods except one. So, first let me explain that, that is force distribution method. Force distribution method meaning in a group of the appraisees we have predetermined percentage allocation of the slabs of the performance, and we in the a priori we decide that how many people will be rated the lowest, how much percentage of the people will be rated highest, how many between lowest category and the highest category. So, it is based on certain assumptions. One of the assumptions is the normal distribution curve, but other assumptions are related to more strategic orientation, are related to the orientation to the human resources itself. Nonetheless, the force distribution method requires a priori assignment of some percentage of the employees in a particular category. So, for example, for many years GE, where they popularized it, where they implemented it and it remained part of their performance management system for many decades. Now, they have gone away from there. There it was given that every year bottom 10% people will be put either on the observation desk or they will be under more frequent track of the performance, or they will be asked to leave. That is the result of the force distribution method. It has its advantages because then nobody would like to remain at the bottom. So, everybody will exert more effort and they would like to outperform others. So, it has its benefit, and that is why it was implemented. There are some disadvantages as well, that employee appraisal result depend on the choice of the cutoff point. So, companies one year may decide bottom 10%, for another year they may decide bottom 15%. Likewise, so that choice remains arbitrary. That can be justified on various bases, market capitalization basis, cost cutting basis, new technology, the arrival of new technology, on that basis those percentage can be modified. So, that at times work at the disadvantage of the employees. Now, we will look at the other methods and what are their advantages and disadvantages. Graphic rating scale, the advantage is that it is simple to use, and probably that is why in most of the appraisal forms you will see some element of graphic rating, rating the performance on 1 to 5 or 1 to 7 on such a scale is perhaps one of the most commonly found characteristics of the appraisal forms. So, it has advantage because it is simple to use and it provides a quantitative rating for each employee of otherwise such complex aspects of the performance or complex competencies. Disadvantage is that standard may be unclear. As we discussed earlier, meaning of 2 can be different to different people, or meaning from meaning of 4 or 5, or different numbers of the scale might mean differently to the different appraisees and different appraisers. So, that is a major disadvantage. There are aspects like halo effect, central tendency, leniency, bias. We are going to look at some of these errors in the later part of this session. These are commonly found weaknesses or cause of the errors in appraisal in appraisal systems, and we will discuss that. BARS, behaviorally anchored rating scale, as we discussed, the advantage is that it provides behavioral anchors. So, it is very accurate, but it is very difficult to develop, because for each job there can be multiple criteria, maybe a dozen criteria relevant, and on all those dozen criteria we need to develop 7, 10, 12 incidences which reflect the scale of the performance. So, quite an exhaustive task, and very few organizations can afford to have this kind of assessment for most of the positions or most of the jobs or most of the job categories available in those organizations. Alternation ranking, the advantage is that is very simple. You have to just rank the employee from 1 to whatever number of employees are there, but it can cause disagreement among the employees, and it is perhaps subjected to major biases. It is very difficult to compare the team members exactly. In the comparison, the appraisees, in the comparison of the appraisee, appraiser's bias can creep in even subconsciously. Appraiser may even not aware of it, but that bias can creep in. So, that is the disadvantage. We have already discussed the advantage and disadvantage of the force distribution method. Critical incidence method, as we discussed, advantage is that it very beautifully combines the quantitative assessment as well as qualitative assessment. So, it is naturally more nuanced in comparison to the graphic rating or force distribution method, but it is difficult to rate or rank employees. So, based on the incidences, it is difficult to rate the employees. So, at times what happens when we use the critical incidence method, managers face the dilemma whether they should go by the numerical rating or quantitative rating, or they should go by the qualitative interpretation of their performance, qualitative data about their performance, and again the different appraiser may mean differently with the different with the same qualitative description or descriptors of the performance. So, at times the critical incidence method becomes the source for bias, source for subjective assessment, and last we discussed about the MBO, that is tied to jointly agreed upon performance objectives at organizational, department and team level. As we discussed, the beauty of MBO is that the strategic alignment is ensured in the MBO, and secondly it is very discussion based, data based, and supposed to be a democratic process. Certainly it is much more transparent process, but the disadvantage is that because of lot of negotiation involved, lot of objectification of the otherwise subjective performance criteria is involved. So, it is very time consuming. It was observed that many organizations which implemented MBO, the employees, managers spent couple of months in each performance yearly cycle just to set the MBO process for the next year. So, it is exhaustive and time consuming process. At this stage, I would like to take your attention to another method of performance management system, which is balanced scorecard. Balanced scorecard in a way addresses some many limitations of the methods of other performance appraisal methods. Why? Because it is having the developmental objective, which is probably there in most of the or many of the other methods, but it also includes the perspective of multiple stakeholders. So, balanced scorecard is based on a systemic understanding of the organization, where we recognize that shareholders are but one of the stakeholders of the organization, and we need to include the perspective of the multiple stakeholders, and customers, internal customers as well as external customers in the performance appraisal system. So, balance scorecard is designed based on 4 criteria: financial, inter-business process, learning and development, and customers perspective. Financial criteria of the balance scorecard are related to the financial performance. So, typically what we look at in the financial performance is are based on return on investment, return on assets, cost of capital, all profitability and various ratios, debt equity ratio and various financial ratios. They are the indicators of the different aspects of the financial performance. So, that is very much part of the balance scorecard, but along with the financial, balance scorecard also includes the business process related indicators, means to satisfy our shareholders and customer what business process we excel at. So, what are the key business processes, what are the objectives about those processes, how we want to achieve the efficiency in those processes, all that description is there in the balance scorecard. So, balance scorecard is not only looking at the lagging indicators which are financial, means they tell how you performed in past. Internal business process also are the indicators of past as well as future. So, past, because it is based on the performance cycle, and for the internal business processes we identify the performance criteria. So, it gives the past data, but it also gives the future data, because number one, we identify the objective about the business process upgrade. We also identify that business process related objective in terms of or in light of our aspiration about the future performance, about the strategic direction of the organization, because the strategic direction of the organization will decide which processes have to be given more priority or more attention. So, this is a beautiful indicator which captures the leading as well as the lagging indicator. Learning and growth is primarily a leading indicator, because that is about the developmental plans. We discussed that developmental plans are generally accepted, generally they are the part of appraisal forms. So, a balance scorecard includes the learning and growth not only at the individual level, but also at the level of departments and at the level of organization. So, it makes the learning and development process integrated to the strategic development process or a strategy implementation process. So, that is another special characteristic of the balance scorecard, and it also includes customer satisfaction, because there is nothing stronger indicator, nothing stronger leading indicators than customer satisfaction about the performance of an organization. So, balance scorecard also includes customer satisfaction scores and different ways of assessing the customer satisfaction, customers performance, that makes this whole process very comprehensive in nature. Norton and Kaplan, the reference of their Harvard Business Review article is given. This is not only one article, this is the one probably which has highest number of citations, more than 26,000, but Norton and Kaplan have also written multiple articles on the balance scorecard, how to use it, what are the philosophical foundations of it, what are the operational key, what are the tips to implement the balance scorecard. We talk about web based performance management system, and in the beginning of the course we knew that we need to keep coming back to the digitization aspect of the HR systems and processes. So, what we discovered, what we discussed till now in this session, that is relevant data for the web based assessment as well as the digitized assessment as well as the paper and pencil assessment, but web based performance management will have some specific characteristics, and generally in a web based performance system you see these 4 components given on the 4 different pages. One is about the biographical data, second and third are the key aspects of the performance management system, which include the performance summary, behavior related summary or initiatives related summary, legal and ethical conduct, diversity, cultural sensitivity. Many organizations have also included the values in their appraisal formats, employee comments, what is employee self assessment about that, about his or her performance and overall performance. These elements constitute the major part of the any web based performance management system as well. And then fourth is the developmental summary. So, generally these are given on these 3 or 4 pages. That data, the potential of having performance management system online is that we can summarize the data, we can compile the data, we can do the content analysis of the collective data about the performance, development related or achievement related performance. We can summarize, we can identify the pattern, and we can also identify the developmental plan or training and development strategy for the organization. So, we will discuss about the training and development process in the next session, but I would like to pay notice that the power of web based performance management system is that it can help summarizing the otherwise widely scattered performance criteria in a very effective way. And when we are able to identify, when we are able to summarize the performance related data in an effective way, we can quickly look at what are the areas of improvement, what should be the developmental interventions, which are the aspects of the performance which needs maximum more attention, which are the aspect of the performance which require to be assessed differently. All kind of questions, all kind of operational questions, a large number of operational questions related to performance appraisal can be answered very easily when we make the PMS a web based system. At this stage we must discuss the problems and solutions of potential rating scale. At this stage we must discuss the possible errors or the cause of the errors of in the performance appraisal. Potential rating scale appraisal problems, that is how we title this. First problem may arise because of the unclear standards. We have already discussed about it, and we also discussed that there has to be a definitional clarity in any appraisal form. If that is not there, standard remain unclear, so naturally it is subjected to the biased assessment, ill informed assessment, dissatisfaction with that assessment. So, all these dysfunctionalities may occur in the appraisal system if the standards are unclear. Second problem is halo effect. Sometime we get affected, or the appraiser can be influenced by one particular quality of the appraisee, and that is called halo effect. So, one particular quality or characteristic or the form, one particular form of achievement can influence the overall appraisal of the appraisee, and that is called halo effect. Central tendency, some of the appraisers have the tendency to keep their marks, keep their scores in the middle range, somewhere between, somewhere around mean and median of the scores. So, that is the next aspect, another very important, another very crucial source of problem in the rating bias or the errors in rating. Another bias, another problem is the leniency or strictness. How can someone be so good? I do not give highest rating to even the best of the best performers in my team, or I generally give, I generally start assessment from the good, I do not give anyone average or below average. So, these are the examples of the strictness and the leniency. Some appraisers develop these tendency because of several reasons, and that causes problem in the appraisal system. Bias may arise of the stereotype, it may arise of my affiliation to particular caste, creed, gender. So, or bias towards particular type of campuses, particular type of background. Bias can be coming from any stream, any direction. So that is again equally powerful, equally avoidable problem in the appraisal system. This is one example given of the unclear standard. We have the heads of the assessment, we also have a scale 1 to 4, 4 means excellent, 1 means poor, but if we do not define what is the meaning of excellent or what is the meaning of poor, different people will mean it differently, and for the similar level of performance different appraiser will give different kind of ratings, and different appraisee interpret their performance differently. So this is a pictorial representation of the one error, one kind of error which is related to unclear standard. Focusing on one or two critical incidences, this is called recency effect. So that causes bias in the appraisal system. Lower ratings for the less challenges is also a source of discrepancy in the appraisal system. If challenges are if the job is less challenging, that is the nature of the job, for which we cannot make incumbent anyway responsible. So his rating or her rating should not be lower than the people who are having the high level challenge, as long as it is there in the part of their job description. Nobody can be that good, that is what we discussed in the strictness. Similarity bias, that is a source of bias where I look out for the qualities which I have, and whenever I see that quality in others, my rating towards them naturally go up. Being influenced by the prior performance, that is again the source of the bias, source of error in the rating. Rating for retention, we need to understand that rating in the performance appraisal are given for the developmental purpose. It is not easy to implement, and we are going to discuss the possibility of the implementation and what are the best ways of implementing PMS, but if that clarity is not there, and when that clarity is not there in the design or in the communication about the performance, then a performance appraisal can be used not only for the development, may not be for the development, may be used for threatening, may be used for retention, may be used for just appeasement of the different stakeholders or the different employees. It can be subjected to all sorts of distortion. So rating for retention should not be the objective. The objective of rating need not be retention, it should be development, and if retention is a challenge, we need to address it, we need to communicate it in the different way. It should be communicated, it should be addressed by different organizational policy, but just by appraisal system we should not try to retain people. Style differences, that can be the cause of the errors. Different managers can approach this whole process differently. Same organization, same policy, implemented by different managers with their teams in different ways, there is always a scope of diversity of implementing some of these policies which look similar, but they may get implemented differently. So that is the style difference, and that has to be watched out for, that must be tracked, that must be studied in order to avoid any error or bias. Emotional rating is another challenge of the rating, and that can cause error because of some immediate incidents. If emotions are aroused, in the emotion whatever rating I have given, it can be high, it can be low. So emotions can work on both ways, but whatever is the way, that is not the objective representation of the reality. So that is also something to be avoided, and that is a major, that can be a major source of the error in the rating. Recent performance only, recency effect, which we discussed. Friendship is also a form of a bias. It can be coming from various sources, region, caste, campus, community, language, so on and so forth, but these are very important aspect of the appraisal system. In the training program, during the training program, participants must be made sensitive about the problem being caused because of these errors and how to avoid those errors. So, we must know the problem. In order to avoid this problem, organizations must use the right tool. They need to train the supervisors, they need to control the outside influences and keeping a diary. Regular performance tracking always better than appraisal of the performance in a quarter or half year, or worst only at the end of the year. So, these are the ways where we can avoid the errors in the assessment of the performance. We must also talk about the appraisal interview. I think this is one of the most memorable aspect, one of the most important discussion we have with our supervisor in our jobs. So, we need to discuss about the appraisal interview. In the end of the interview, generally we see these kind of comments: satisfactory, unsatisfactory, satisfactory can be promotable, not promotable, unsatisfactory can be correctable, uncorrectable. These are the type of the final evaluation you get in the after the appraisal interview. Guidelines for conducting interview are again coming from the book by Workey, by the Dessler and Workey. They talk about different methods of enhancing the quality of the appraisal interview. What are those methods? First is talk in terms of the objective work data. We need not to talk in terms of I feel that you have not been putting up the best effort. We need to say that okay, you have been clocking in these many hours, or you have been responsive about these many queries in this much time in last 1 week, which is lower than the standard of this much, etc. So, we need to have a discussion based on the objective data. We must not get personal. It is about the job, it is about the organization, it is not between the two individuals, and that must be remembered by appraisee as well as appraiser. Encourage the person to talk. So, appraisee must also be given chance to put up his or her perspective. Many a time we ask the appraisee to speak about their performance before appraiser speak about their performance. So, in a good appraisal interview, there has to be the scope for the appraisee talking about his or her performance, obstacles, or the resource requirements, or his learning or his or her learning experience. Do not tiptoe around. We need to talk about the specific criteria or aspects related to the performance. There is no benefit of talking about some peripheral things which are not directly related to the performance. So, by following these advice, by following these guidelines, we can have a very good quality of the discussion during the appraisal interview. There is always a possibility of having a defensive subordinate who might not be open to receive feedback, who might not be willing to accept the limitations or the potential of enhancement of their performance. So, we must recognize the defensive behavior is a normal process. It may be demonstrated by every one of us with less or more degrees. So, in that case also we should never attack the person's defenses. We should, if possible, postpone the action and recognize our limitation and put up things in a more and more objective way. Sometimes we have to criticize the subordinate, sometimes we have to find out some ways to convey that his performance or her performance is not up to the mark. So, there are some guidelines for criticizing the subordinate. First one being, do it in a manner that lets the person maintain his or her dignity and self-worth. As it was mentioned in the previous slide as well, that we must not be personal about each other's performance. So, we need to talk in terms of the objective performance criteria and should not attack the dignity of the person. As long as possible, as far as possible, criticize in private, but do it constructively, which is called the developmental conversation, which is aiming at identifying what are the next steps to correct the problems in the performance or in the behavior of the employee. Giving daily feedback is also very useful. If not daily, a regular feedback is certainly more useful than giving feedback only at the end of the quarter, end of the half year, or end of the year. Never say the person is always wrong. Criticism should be objective and free of biases. We have already discussed about these points. This is the checklist, very useful checklist. You may use it or you may use some component of it in the performance appraisal. That is, did you discuss each goal or objective established for his employee? That is, this checklist is given for the appraiser. Are you and the employee clear on the areas of agreement, disagreement? Did you give the employee a sense of what you thought of his or her potential or ability? I will request all the participants to go through this checklist. This is very useful. You can include some of these aspects in your own appraisal system, or you can use those if you are appraising someone in your organization. Now we will talk about creating performance management process within organization. If your organization is aiming at transforming the performance management system or setting up the performance management system, we will talk about some of the things which are useful to be followed. First thing we need to know is what is the strategy and what are our long term goals. What does this mean for the goals we set for our employees, how we train, how we appraise, how we promote and reward them. So basically performance appraisal system revolves around these two questions. What are my strategy and what I am going to do with my employees in terms of their training, appraisal, promotion and reward. So a good performance appraisal must answer these questions. Typically the step of setting up a performance management system is given in this slide, which means which starts with the system inauguration, self appraisal, classical performance review, merit or salary review, development plan and objective setting. This is a cyclical process. Objective setting again results into system inauguration and the other steps in the next performance cycle. If you are setting up or changing the performance management system, communicating about it and effectively communicating about it is very crucial. So we in the communication plan we must convey to the employees, convey to all the stakeholders that what is the performance management, how does performance management fit in our strategy, what is the connection between performance management and organization strategy, how it is going to work, why it is important for subordinates, why it is important for the team members, why it is important for the team leaders, why it is important for the different people in the organization, what are my responsibilities, how I can make this plan successful. As we discussed before, that even a good appraisal policy or for that matter any policy, when implemented with the right intention, with the seriousness and commitment, that results into organizational effectiveness. But even if policy is very good, even if the formats are very sophisticated, if the implementation of those policies or filling up of those formats is not done sincerely, then those policies or formats will not be of much use to enhance the organizational effectiveness. So people must understand the responsibility to make the performance management system effective and successful for their organization, and that has to be conveyed in the beginning of the implementation process of PMS. Then how is performance management related to other initiatives like promotion, training, succession planning? It is crucial to show the connection if they are there, and a good performance management system has some connection, may not be only connection, may not be only related to the salary, but it should have the connection with the promotion, training, succession planning. Only then people can take the PMS seriously. We must understand that PMS is a anchor system, or performance appraisal form is a anchor document which can govern the behavior of the people at the organization, and that drives their behavior, or that drives their energy towards valued goals of the organization. So, while designing the PMS, we must keep this objective in mind, and we must see how the PMS is connected to other organizational processes like learning and development, succession planning, promotion, transfer, etc. One important component of the performance appraisal system I would like to point out is the formal written warnings, that is part of and should be part of any performance appraisal system. It is important because it is sometimes essential to convey employees about the expectations, or convey about what is what they have done which is not expected from them in writing. So, the purpose of the written warnings are generally to shake employees out of bad habits and to help you defend your ratings. Whenever there are ratings, there can be dissatisfaction, there can be disagreement, and in those situations organization must have the system of written warning if required. A written warning should have identifying the standards by which employee is judged, what is expected, what are the expectation from the employee. It must make clear that employee was aware of that standard. So, that is come the communication plan, because a good communication plan is essential to implement the performance management system. Specify the deficiency, specify the error related to the standard, and indicate employees prior opportunity for correction. So, in a written warning generally we need to have these 4 elements which are essential, which can be very useful at times in a performance management system. Second point is that a good performance management system also has appeals process. If I am not agreeing with the ratings given by my supervisor, I as an employee have to have some avenue, some forum where I can appeal against it. That has to be of 2 issues, judgmental issues and administrative issues. Judgmental issues are related to the content of the performance, content of the appraisal of the performance, and administrative issues are related to the process of the performance appraisal. In the judgmental issues, supervisor of the employee or the people from their department, maybe the colleagues and subordinate must be involved, because they are the most immediate people who have a best idea about the job. Administrative process must include the HR department, because they have the best idea about how the process flow is there of the performance management system in organization. A good performance management system, even if it is fantastic in the view of the business leaders and HR leaders, must go through the pilot testing before full-fledged implementation. Here we must talk about the stretch goals as well, because stretch goals are, because performance management system can be used effectively to convey about the stretch goals of the performance of the employees. Stretch goals are very useful because it diverts the attention away from activities that are not relevant to the goals. So, stretch goals make people make employees more focused to the performance. Challenging goals are energizing, they lead to high level of effort as well as high level of creativity and innovation. They lead to persistence, and they motivate employees to use their knowledge in unconventional way by applying creativity, by applying new technology, or maybe development of the new technology. All these things are possible when stretch goals are communicated, and performance management system can be helpful in conveying the stretch goals. A good PMS has to go through a proper monitoring and evaluation process. Number of individuals who are evaluated, that can be one aspect of the performance of PMS or the effectiveness of the PMS. Distribution of performance rating, that can be another indicator how my PMS is working. If my performance ratings are very skewed, then we can assume that probably people are suffering from severe biases in the appraisal process. Quality of information, am I getting the good information about developmental needs or the area of improvement in the individual performance, team performance or organization performance, am I getting the useful input? That is the one example of the quality of information. Quality of performance discussion meeting, how people are experiencing, how people are feeling after going through the performance evaluation or performance discussion. Are they feeling motivated about their future? Are they feeling frustrated with this process? What are that feeling? That tells us about how PMS is working in the organization. How system is satisfied. In the engagement surveys, we can ask questions from the employees about their satisfaction with the performance management system. So, how system is satisfied, how top management is satisfied about the different levels of about the performance appraisal of at different levels. Are they getting enough data or insights to make the policies? And secondly, how lower rungs of employees, how they are satisfied in terms of the fairness they are receiving in the process, in terms of their performance being recognized, and also in terms of the overall process, how it is conveying the organizational objectives and strategy. So, system satisfaction have to be looked at the lower rung, at the frontline level as well as at the senior level, to understand how PMS is working. And over cost benefit ratio, how much time we are spending in the PMS, and how we are doing in terms of the other 5 indicators. So, we need to see whether the time is spent or the money is spent on implementation, design and implementation of the process, is it leading to quality of information, number of individual evaluated, distribution of the good distribution of the performance rating, quality of the performance discussion, is it indicating, is it resulting into, is it showing these results. So, based on that we can assess the cost and benefit ratio of the PMS. Performance management and employee development are deeply connected. Development planning is a joint activity. It happens during the performance appraisal or performance discussion meetings. Personal development plans allow employees to answer the questions like, how can I continually learn and grow in the next year, how can I do better in future, how can I avoid performance problems faced in the past. So, based on the developmental plans, we come to know about various factors related to the development of the employee and which are the activities involved in the development process. So, the developmental activities can be the on the job training, different courses, self guided reading, mentoring, coaching. So, a good performance appraisal discussion leads to a developmental discussion, and that is where the performance management system ends and training and development or learning and development system starts. So, in the next session we are going to discuss about the learning and development process or learning and development system in the organizations. Thank you very much. Namaste.